October 1978, the Aladdin Hotel showroom. Ace Frehley was halfway through his guitar solo on New York Groove when a man in the front row stood up. No Space Ace makeup tonight, just Paul Daniel Frehley in leather pants and a Les Paul hanging from his shoulder. The spotlight caught the man who'd risen from his seat. Expensive silk suit, diamond pinky ring catching the stage lights. The kind of face that had broken noses and collected debts. Vincent, the Hammer Castellano, a Vegas enforcer everyone knew operated outside the law. He pointed directly at Ace with a thick finger and said loud enough to cut through the amplifiers, "Play something real, guitar man. Show me what you got." The band stopped cold. 200 people in the intimate showroom froze. Security didn't move because nobody moved when Vincent Castellano spoke. What Ace Frehley did next earned him something that money and platinum records couldn't buy in Sin City: the genuine respect of the Vegas underworld. Before we dive deeper into this story, hit that subscribe button. We're bringing you the untold stories from rock and roll's golden age, the moments that shaped legends. October 1978 was a strange time in Ace Frehley's life. His solo album had just hit the charts harder than anyone expected, including Ace himself. New York Groove was climbing toward the top 20, outselling the other three Kiss solo albums combined. Gene Simmons was quietly furious. Paul Stanley was making passive-aggressive comments in interviews. And Ace, the quiet one, the Space Ace who let his guitar do the talking, suddenly found himself at a crossroads he never anticipated. For the first time in 5 years, Ace was performing without the silver makeup, without the smoke machines and pyrotechnics, without the safety of the Kiss machine surrounding him. Just a man and his guitar, standing on stage, exposed. The Aladdin Hotel wasn't Madison Square Garden. It was an intimate venue, maybe 250 seats, the kind of room where you could see every face in the crowd, where there was no hiding behind production value or spectacle. Eddie Kramer, who'd produced the solo album, had convinced Ace to do a few small shows in Vegas to promote the record. "Let them see the real you," Eddie had said. "Show them Ace Frehley can carry a room without the costume." The show had been going better than Ace expected. His hands were steady, his voice was holding up, and the Jack Daniels he'd been nursing backstage had given him just enough edge without tipping into sloppiness. The crowd was responsive, laughing at his between-song stories about growing up in the Bronx, about learning guitar from a Sears catalog, about the first time he plugged into a Marshall amplifier and felt the power course through him. But Vegas crowds were different from rock crowds. In Vegas, people were used to being entertained, used to getting what they paid for, used to the house always having an edge. Vincent, the Hammer Castellano, represented that Vegas mentality in its most dangerous form. He was sitting at a front-row table with two other men, both clearly muscle, both wearing sunglasses indoors. Castellano was in his late 40s, built like a cement truck, with slicked-back black hair going gray at the temples and a scar running from his left ear to his jawline. He'd earned his nickname, the Hammer, not from his last name, but from his preferred method of collecting debts. A ball-peen hammer to the kneecap, methodical, efficient, memorable. He'd come up through the New York families before relocating to Vegas in the early 70s to oversee casino operations for the Bonanno family. Ace had noticed Castellano when he first walked on stage. You couldn't miss him. The man radiated a particular kind of authority, the kind that came from violence successfully applied over decades. But Ace had played for all kinds of audiences. He'd played biker bars in Queens where fights broke out during sound check. He'd played mob-connected clubs in the Bronx where you didn't ask questions about who owned the place. He knew the type. The show had been building toward its climax. Ace was about to launch into the guitar solo that was the centerpiece of New York Groove, the moment where he could really show what he was capable of without the constraints of Kiss's rigid song structures. His fingers found the fretboard, the Les Paul sang through the Marshall stacks, and for about 30 seconds, everything was perfect. Then Vincent Castellano stood up. At first, Ace thought maybe the guy needed to use the bathroom, but Castellano wasn't moving toward the exit. He stood there at his front row table, arms crossed, staring directly at Ace. Ace kept playing, but his focus was split now. Half his brain was on the guitar solo, the muscle memory of years of practice. The other half was tracking Castellano, trying to figure out what was happening. The audience had noticed too, heads turning, whispers starting, the energy in the room shifting from entertainment to tension. Ace brought the solo to its natural conclusion, the final note sustaining through the amplifiers, and that's when Castellano spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Stop. Ace stopped playing. His band, a pickup group of session musicians, stopped playing. 250 people stopped breathing. Castellano uncrossed his arms and pointed at Ace with one thick finger, the diamond on his pinky catching the light. I paid $200 for this table, front row seats to see Ace Frehley from Kiss. But you're playing this disco garbage. New York Groove? That's not rock and roll. He paused, letting his words settle over the room. Play something real. Show me the guitar player everyone talks about. Play something that proves you belong on that stage. It was a challenge, the kind of challenge a man like Castellano issued to test people, to see if they were real or just image, substance, or just show business smoke and mirrors. It was also deeply disrespectful, reducing Ace's entire career to a test he had to pass for the approval of a mobster. Ace stood there, Gibson Les Paul hanging from his shoulder, processing what had just happened. His band members were looking at him with barely concealed panic. The venue security were frozen against the back wall because everyone in Vegas knew who Vincent Castellano was. Ace could see it in the faces of the audience. Fear mixed with morbid curiosity. They thought they were about to watch Ace Frehley get humiliated by a connected guy in front of a packed house. What Castellano didn't know was that Ace Frehley had grown up around men exactly like this. The Bronx in the 1950s and 60s wasn't a playground. It was a place where respect was currency, where showing weakness got you victimized, where understanding the unspoken rules of the street could mean the difference between getting home safe or getting hurt. Ace's father had worked construction, had come home with stories about union guys, about how sites operated, about the code that governed men who worked with their hands. Ace had learned guitar in basements that smelled like cigarettes and spilled beer, had played for audiences of neighborhood tough guys who didn't give a damn about technique, who only cared if the music made them feel something. Ace looked at Vincent Castellano for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not the practiced stage smile, not the Space Ace smirk. This was a recognition smile, the kind that says, I know what game we're playing. Vincent Castellano, Ace said into the microphone, his voice carrying the slight Bronx rasp. The hammer himself. I heard you might show up tonight. Castellano's expression shifted slightly. He hadn't expected Ace to know his name. Now, Vincent, Ace continued, taking a few steps closer to the edge of the stage. You want me to play something real? Fair enough. But let me ask you something first. You're in the business, right? You know how things work in this town. You know about respect, about territory, about doing your job the way you know how to do it. Ace adjusted the Les Paul on his shoulder. I respect that, but this guitar, this stage, this is my territory. And New York Groove might not be the heaviest thing I've ever played, but it's sitting at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 right now. So maybe it's more real than you think. It was a calculated risk, essentially telling a mobster he was wrong, but Ace delivered it with enough humor and respect that it didn't sound like a challenge. Castellano stared at Ace. The muscles in his jaw worked. Then, slowly, Vincent the Hammer Castellano started to laugh. It was genuine, the kind of laugh that comes from unexpected appreciation. You got balls, Frehley. You got actual balls. I like that. I appreciate that, Vincent, Ace said. Now you want to hear something heavy? I can do that, but I'm going to do it my way. Castellano nodded. Your way. That's fair. He sat back down. The tension transformed into a different kind of energy. People exhaled. Scattered applause started building. Ace turned to his band. You guys know Shock Me? The drummer nodded enthusiastically. Let's give Vincent what he wants. The real deal. They launched into Shock Me, the song Ace had written about getting electrocuted on stage, the song that showcased everything he could do on guitar. Raw power, bluesy bends, speed runs that most guitarists couldn't pull off. He played it harder than he'd played it with Kiss, pushed the Les Paul through the Marshalls until the speakers were crying. Vincent Castellano was on his feet again, smiling, head nodding, appreciating greatness. The rest of the show was transcendent. By the time he finished, sweat soaking through his shirt, the standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. After the show, Ace was in his dressing room when there was a knock. Tommy, his road manager, stuck his head in. Boss, Vincent Castellano wants to talk to you. Ace's first thought was maybe he'd misjudged the situation. Send him in. Vincent Castellano walked in alone, without his muscle. That was significant. Mr. Frehley, Castellano said, extending his hand. Ace shook it. The mobster's grip was firm, the handshake of equals. I want to apologize. I was testing you tonight. I've seen too many rock stars come through Vegas, guys who are all image. I needed to know if you were real. And? You're genuine. You didn't back down, but you didn't get stupid either. You showed respect while demanding it back. That's rare. I grew up in the Bronx, Ace said. Different streets, same rules. Castellano nodded. He pulled out a business card, handed it to Ace. Just a phone number. You have any problems in this town, you call that number. You're under protection now. Anyone gives you trouble, they answer to me. Why? Because men like you are rare. Men who understand the old code, who have real talent but don't let it make them soft. That's worth protecting. The word spread through Vegas like electricity. Ace Frehley had protection from the Hammer. Casino owners suddenly became accommodating. Other musicians looked at Ace differently. The Vegas police gave him more space. Ace could walk the strip at 3 a.m. without security. He could gamble anywhere and trust the games were straight. But the psychological impact was more profound. For a kid from the Bronx who'd always felt like an outsider, who'd hidden behind Space Ace makeup, Vincent Castellano's respect meant someone had looked past the costume and seen the real person, had tested that person, and found them worthy. They'd occasionally see each other around Vegas over the years, would nod, sometimes share a drink. Castellano came to more shows, always front row, bringing friends, introducing them to Ace like royalty. Years later, after Ace had left Kiss, Castellano called. I heard you're going through some things. The protection still stands. Ace was moved. I appreciate that, Vincent, but this is something I have to handle myself. I respect that, but the offer stands. They never spoke again. Castellano died in 1987, shot outside a Las Vegas restaurant. When Ace heard about it, he felt genuine loss. The story became Vegas legend. But the people who were there knew the truth was more impressive than any embellishment. What Ace had done required more courage than fighting. He'd read a dangerous situation correctly, understood the psychology of the man testing him, responded in exactly the right way to transform potential disaster into mutual respect. These were survival skills from the Bronx, from understanding how power worked on the streets, from knowing when to stand firm and when to show respect. Ace passed that test not with violence or submission, but with intelligence and humor. He turned a potential enemy into a protector, a challenge into a legend, and earned something platinum albums couldn't buy: the respect of men who respected very few people. Play something real, Vincent Castellano had demanded, and Ace had played. But he'd done it on his terms, with his dignity intact, proving that Paul Daniel Frehley from the Bronx was just as real as Space Ace, because he didn't need the makeup to handle himself.